and welcome to Elderberry by Elizabeth. Today, I want to talk all things bone broth. Now, why bone broth? It doesn't really use anything from my garden, but it is like the most basic building block for any seasonal soup recipe or casserole. You're going to open your cookbook and it's going to say 2 cups of chicken stock or something like that, and you're going to be thinking, well, I guess I have to go buy that box from the store and it's going to cost $3 to $5 depending on how pricey and organic, and if I want it to be bone broth or stock or just regular broth. And so I want to explain to you the benefits of making it at home, why and how, and just have a little kitchen chat this week. So my very first tip is going to be to get an Instant Pot. If you don't have one, find one, borrow one. This is the bone broth magic bullet. It keeps the bones cooking at a very low temperature for a very long time, unsupervised. It's very consistent. My crock pot often would burn broth. My stovetop, it's the same way. The temperature is modulating up and down. This baby keeps it low and slow the entire time, and it makes really good broth. The number one way that you know you have great bone broth with all the collagen, amino acids, and minerals that you want in it is that it will be gelatin when it's in the fridge. This is also how you know that a lot of the even organic bone broth that you find at the store ain't that great. Because if you put that box in the fridge and it doesn't turn to gelatin, it's not the real deal. It's not that nutritious or beneficial. The homemade stuff is also higher calorie, higher mineral, and it just tends to be better for you, but a lot of that can be destroyed, especially the proteins can be destroyed if they're burned or cooked too hot, and the taste can be horrible if you don't cook it very, very low temperature. So how do I get this started? Well, first of all, I'm willing to mix and match bones. So if I cook a pork shoulder one night and we eat on that for a few days, and then I cook a whole chicken another night and we eat off of that, I'm willing to throw those bones into a box in my freezer, and then when that box gets full, I will throw them all in together and make bone broth. If you want to be a purist, you've got to buy a lot more meat and make a lot more bones. You've got to go to butcher shops and shop around for more quantities of bones. Because the number one rule for making bone broth is you need a ton of bones. You cannot just take one chicken carcass, put it into a pot full of water and get bone broth. You will get good chicken broth, but you will not get that gelatin concentrated nutritional benefit that you will if you are using an actual pile of bones. So get a big pile of bones going. I mix and match because it's all nutritious. It all has good stuff in it. How do you make it? What recipe do you use? Here's my collection of chicken bones. I don't have a recipe, and I recommend that you don't have a recipe either, and here's why. We don't know how many pounds of bones you have, what quality the bones are, what size, how many you can fit in your pot, and that all is the basis for how to make this. So what I would recommend is pack your bones into your pot as densely as you can, and then just barely cover those bones with water. Do not fill the pot up to the top with water and go, oh, I want 8 cups of bone broth, and then make an 8-cup pot of water. Absolutely do not do that. Just barely cover the bones, and then add in a couple tablespoons of apple cider vinegar over the top of your bones. You can add really as much vinegar as you want. It helps to break down the bones and demineralize them so that more of the minerals get into the broth. And it's really up to your preference. I recommend at least a couple tablespoons, but I just dash it in there and go. It's nothing crazy. And then finally, I would recommend not adding in don't add any extra seasonings and spices when you're making this. What's my reasoning for that? Well, you find these fancy bloggers with their fancy bone broth recipes, and they say throw in a whole onion and throw in some garlic and throw in, you know, a bay leaf, and they add on all these spices. If you do that at the start of making bone broth, the flavor will be pretty much destroyed by the time you come out the other end, because this has to cook for 6 to 8 hours on low pressure. So do not add in the spices until the bone broth is strained and it's complete and it's beautiful and it's in your jars. Then you can take that jar out of the fridge or the freezer, heat it up on the stove, and then you add in the spices according to whatever you're making. If you're making soup, you add in your soup spices. Chili, you add in your chili spices, and so forth. But I would recommend not seasoning this. It will not make it taste better. In some cases, it will make it taste worse. You're just cooking it too long and too strong, and there's really no point. Okay, so I have this on low pressure, 240 minutes, which is 4 hours, sealed. And after the first round, I'm probably going to open it, push the bones down into the water. They're really cold and crunchy right now, but I know they're going to give a lot as they cook. So I'm not going to add water over the bones. There's a lot of bones in there. Instead, I filled it up most of the way, and I'll just let them settle as the process continues. That's all there is to it. After this 4 hours is done and I check it, I will repressurize it, put it on for 240 minutes, and then 240 minutes again. The benefit of the Instant Pot is if I set it before bed and after 4 hours it times out, it is going to keep this at a safe temperature, a warm temperature, but a safe temperature for 10 more hours before it turns off. So I have all night to sleep, and I can wake up and restart this in the morning and not have to worry about supervising it whatsoever, which is amazing for something that has to cook as long as bone broth.
So I actually ended up letting this cook for 12 hours on low pressure, not including the time that it spent on the warming setting. So that's a little bit on the outside limit of what's safe, especially for chicken bones. If you're using a sturdier, bigger bone, like a beef or a pork bone in your broth, you can let it go a little bit longer than that. There are actually different times for different bones. 12 hours is safe for even small bones. And by safe, I mean you aren't going to be destroying the collagen and the proteins in the broth. Some folks at this point might send their bones back into the pot and do a second round of broth. My bones were so soft and falling apart when I finished this recipe that I just discarded them. You can see there was some marrow floating around in the pot, so I felt like I did a pretty decent job getting all the nutrition out. You will notice there's a ton of fat floating on the top of these jars. I refrigerate the broth, and then when the fat hardens, I scoop it all out, and we don't eat that. If your broth has chilled, you can freeze it in the mason jars. Just be careful to thaw it slowly when you want to use it.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it, leave me a comment, share it with your friends, and come back for more. You can find me over on YouTube and subscribe to my channel there, or you can stick with me here on Facebook. I post about once a week.